you know, when Darwin came out, he had this idea, a lot of people don't know this, that he believed acquired characteristics. So how did that happen? How did the neck grow longer on the giraffe? He believed in something called pangenesis with gems and gemmules, that somehow that when the giraffe was reaching longer, it was stretching its neck, that its somatic cells, its body cells, could somehow communicate with its gamete cells, the sex cells, and then that trait could be passed on. Well, we know now that it's hogwash. And you think, well, how could all those scientists believe that? How could they fall for that? Well, you got to remember back then they had microscopes, but they couldn't see inside of a cell. So the story that was made up out of Darwin's mind, it sounded good. It sounded plausible. There was nothing observable at that time to rule against it. But once we got better microscopes, and plus, you remember, and they ignored the facts of Mendel for 40 years. That's nothing they ignored. Plus, they didn't have the microscope. You think, how could they fall for that? That's the same thing that's going on today. All these scientists, we got the 78 scientists and all these institutions that say evolution is bad. And it stops progression in observable science, even though it's not observable science. But even back then, you got to think about it. All those scientists believed in pangenesis back then. That's the fallacy of the majority, and also the fallacy of the minority. That is critical thinking. Critical thinking and logic needs to be brought to the classroom. That's just another example. In this act, you can't talk about religion. It's like, I heard this analogy once. It's like saying that, it's like saying that your boss puts you in charge of the company picnic. And you can make any decision with the company picnic, except you can't mention hot dogs or anything with hot dogs. You can't say, will there be hot dogs? You can't say there won't be hot dogs. You can't even mention hot dogs. And so that's what this law passes. It passes logical, critical thinking, and religion is not allowed to be mentioned it. Now, so why are we still here? If this is just based on critical thinking and the facts, why do they keep putting this up? I have to wonder if they're calling the kettle's calling the pot black. Do they have a hidden agenda? I want to ask them, what is your belief behind, why are you so strongly behind evolution? Do you have an atheist belief that you want to bring into the classroom, that you want supported? Is that why? I can't ask them that. I would like to know that, because why are they so against critical thinking? Why are they against the Cambrian rock layers? Why are they against what mutations actually show? The difference between observable science and historical science. And so, did anybody have any questions? Another thing is, like, I think logic's needed. It's better science, it's better discoveries, and like I said, when in the past history shows when things are unbiased, discoveries are made. And also evolution not only held up Mendel's genetics, it held up vestigial organs. For instance, the tailbone, they said that evolved from a monkey. Well, what does a tailbone do? A tailbone has many muscles attached to it. If you didn't have that tailbone, all your inside guts would fall out your bottom. What about junk DNA? Junk DNA, that was also not looked into for a long time because they believed it was junk DNA and didn't have a purpose. They thought it was leftovers from evolution. Well, it turns out junk DNA turns your genes on and off. What about the appendix? I could go on and on and on. How evolution, a belief that is supported by some and evolution, there's parts of evolution are true. Like I said, microevolution, natural selection, those are true. But science needs to be science. It needs to be based on logic, on math. 2 + 2 is 4, no matter what you believe, no matter what your belief about the past is. Does anybody have any questions? I know I ran through that quick.